Welcome to Living Well with MS Coffee Break, a part of the Living Well with MS podcast family from Overcoming MS, the world's leading multiple sclerosis healthy lifestyle charity, celebrating its 10th year of serving the MS community. I'm your host, Jeff Alex. Today, you'll meet someone living with MS from our diverse and global Overcoming MS community. Our Coffee Break series invites you into the lives of each guest. They share their personal MS journeys and speak openly about their challenges and victories, large and small. We hope you find some common cause and a source of inspiration from the stories of these very special people. You can check out our show notes for more information and useful links. You can find these on our website at overcomingms.org/podcast. If you enjoy the show, please spread the word about us on your social media channels or leave a review wherever you tune into our podcast. Finally, don't forget to subscribe to Living Well with MS on your favourite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. So, get your favourite beverage ready and let's meet today's guest on Living Well with MS Coffee Break. For this episode of the Living Well with MS Coffee Break, I'd like to welcome back Vickie Hatch. Vickie serves as the ambassador of the OMS Circle in Connecticut, USA. She was officially diagnosed with MS in 2017, but had her first discernible symptoms in 2011. She lives well with her MS by following the OMS program and encourages others to do so through her OMS Circle. Vickie has been running her own virtual assistant company since 2003 and enjoys working with her global clients. She is active in her community, serving on the board of an education foundation and volunteering at her church on several committees. She recently completed a whole food plant-based certificate from eCornell and enjoys cooking new and delicious plant-based delicacies for her family and friends. Vickie, welcome back to the podcast and thank you for joining us again. So you're a guest on season 2 of the podcast, way back a couple of years ago, and you're discussing OMS circles and community building. And now we'd like to get to know you a bit better as you're a vital part of the growing global OMS community. So to start off with, could you tell our audience a bit about yourself and your MS journey?
Thanks so much for having me back, Jeff. It's my pleasure. Sure, I live in Connecticut in the Northeast United States, and I started my MS journey way back in 2006. I initially had some foot drop issues, but I wasn't diagnosed at that time. They really weren't sure, and so they wanted to keep an eye on me, but it definitely got my attention, and I started paying closer attention to my health and eating more vegetarian and doing yoga and meditation. And this is all before OMS came into existence. And then back about 10 years later, I started having more symptoms and went back to the doctor. It took about a year from that point to get diagnosed. So I was officially diagnosed in 2017, and I have been living well with MS since.
And so when did you discover OMS?
I was actually discovered it just prior to my diagnosis. I think like many MS patients, I had a feeling that what my diagnosis would be. It was in the realm of discussion with the doctors as they were trying to figure out what was going on. So I found OMS just prior to my diagnosis. So when I got diagnosed, it was really easy to jump right in and start implementing changes into my diet and lifestyle to make myself even healthier.
And so you were already vegetarian, did you say?
I was vegetarian when I started and had been for some time. But then when I looked into the research from OMS and all the evidence behind it, I switched over to completely vegan. And since then, I have gone over to whole food plant-based. So no more vegan junk food.
I think that's a key thing, actually, is that the word whole food.
Yeah.
Because I've been an unhealthy vegetarian in the past, and you think, because you can eat really like junk food, can't you? And there's stuff now I don't know. Probably the same with you.
All the chips and the crisps and the donuts and the Oreos, they can all be vegan, but not very healthy.
I don't know about you in the States, but probably the same. We've got I won't call them out, but the two leading manufacturers of burgers, let's say, now have vegan versions of their leading famous burgers. And I'm fairly sure that they're not very whole food.
Yeah,
there's some lettuce in there.
Yeah, lots of chemicals, lots of artificial flavors, lots of not so healthy fats. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're currently serving as the ambassador of the OMS Circle in Connecticut. So firstly, how is that, and how has that helped, and have you managed that? So OMS circles are sort of regional communities of people following OMS. Obviously, in the pandemic, that's been difficult because traditionally people would have met up and seen each other. So how have you managed over the pandemic, and how has having a community helped during the pandemic?
Oh, excellent question. I think that the pandemic kind of caught us all off guard. We went into lockdown pretty quickly, and our group initially, when the pandemic started, I think we really wanted to stay in touch with each other. We were very concerned about what was going on and what was happening in the world, and especially since we had pre-existing conditions. So when the pandemic lockdowns started, we started with weekly meetings, whereas previously we were doing monthly meetings. And we did weekly meetings via Zoom. Everybody's an expert in Zoom now. And it was really helpful for the entire group, me included, talk about what was happening with the pandemic and our concerns with our conditions and maybe the disease-modifying treatments that we were on. And it was really helpful to have that connection with other OMSers and, have that support. We've since gone down to monthly meetings again, and also still really important, we're still meeting via Zoom, and we still like to connect with each other, but we did have some fun this summer where we were able to meet outside when it was safe. And we had some really nice meetings outside. One was at a local vineyard, and they had live music, and we brought healthy snacks to share with one another. So it was really great to see everybody face to face during the outside meetings.
Yeah, we have one coming up actually where I live. The MS Centre are doing a tryout for their oxygen therapy, and one of the OMS Circle works at the MS Centre, and she said they're already set up for socially distanced and COVID safe and everything. So we're actually going to have a few of us go there, but it is strange. There's quite a lot of people in my circle who I've never physically met. But we have a really active WhatsApp group and we chat a lot. And so I think actually we communicate an awful lot more because it's virtual than we did before, where we met up maybe monthly physically. Now it's sort of daily chats happening and it's quite active. So actually it's actually increased our communication rather than decreased it.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Nice. So the other thing that has changed is that you now do some work for the OMS charity. Sort of going from your work as being a virtual assistant. So could you share some information about that?
Sure. I've been a virtual assistant for almost 20 years. I have been working virtually long before the pandemic. And I started working with OMS this year, and I'm very excited to be part of the team. I'm providing some support directly to Grazina Berry, the CEO, and Daushan Hamza, who is the new chair of the board. And it's really exciting to help them with the plans coming up for 2022 and the 10-year anniversary of OMS. And I also work within the broader team, and I help support meetings and do documentation. And, it's really exciting to work with them. This is a whole nother new community.
And so how's that changed, sort of moving from, because you're already a member of the community, but now you're you're both a member of the community and working there as well. How's that changed?
Yeah, it's been pretty exciting. It's kind of like looking behind the curtain and seeing the inner workings. I have to say, before I started working with OMS, how impressed I was with the organization. And now being on the inside and seeing how it all comes together and seeing all the people that it takes to make this happen and their dedication and the planning and the supports that they put in place for OMSers is just wonderful. It's so nice to see a team working together and celebrating living well with MS and doing what it takes to live well with MS.
I think I've met quite a lot of the people, and before doing the podcast and becoming more involved, you could easily just think that OMS has a new book every few years and does some retreats.
Yes.
And really, is there anything else going on? But then you realise there is an awful lot. There's all the research, and there's communication with different health bodies in different countries, and there's huge amounts going on.
I know that this year they're starting to work with healthcare providers and working directly with the healthcare providers to get more information out there. And it's exciting to see the changes that are coming and all the programs that they're implementing coming up.
And outside of work, could you give us a bit more of an insight about who you are by telling us a little bit about your passions and hobbies?
Sure. I live at home with my husband, and I have 2 grown children and 2 grandchildren. And, the pandemic has changed our life, like everybody, a lot. And one of the things that we changed during the pandemic is we've been hiking and taking walks in the woods a lot more this year. And it's really added a lot to stress reduction in my life. And also, I just love being out there in the woods. And I have found a fascination with mushrooms. I have noticed them on my walks, and I started photographing them with my phone. And it is amazing, the variety of mushrooms. And now I'm almost drawn to them every time we go out for a walk. And they come in all different shapes and colors and sizes. I have taken pictures of purple mushrooms and black mushrooms and orange mushrooms. And they're just fascinating. I started researching a little bit about them. They're not an animal, and they're not a vegetable. They're their own classification. And I just find them fascinating and fun. So that's one of the benefits of the pandemic and changes in our life this past couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, I'm incredibly thankful that I live in a rural area. I can't imagine if we moved from the middle of London to a very rural area many years ago, 17, 18 years ago. And if we'd still been in London with all the lockdowns, I think we'd have been stuck inside an apartment, and being in somewhere rural where you can go out and about.
Yeah,
even in lockdown was really nice. So I feel sorry for the people who are in cities. Apologies.
Yeah.
But it's all improving, hopefully. And you're also, you mentioned mushrooms. You're a passionate food lover, and you've just completed a special certification. So what could you tell our listeners about personal discoveries that you've made learning about food, and specifically OMS compliant food?
Sure. Yeah, I decided to really focus on plant-based when I started OMS, because I was vegetarian before. And recently I got a certificate in plant-based nutrition from eCornell, and I learned so much. As we were discussing earlier, vegan food can be healthier or not healthy. And, everything that we consume is going to contribute to our health or lack thereof. And I learned so much about nutrition and getting the most nutrient-dense foods that I could into my diet. And in learning that, I also became a little braver in the kitchen, and I've learned to experiment a lot more with foods and combining foods, and, maybe going off the recipe a little bit, saying, hey, this would be a lot better if I added some dark leafy greens to it so I could up the nutrition content. I even eat my oatmeal with greens now. I put greens and marinara sauce on my oatmeal, and it's a really nice savory breakfast as opposed to a sweet breakfast.
And so could you give listeners a tip then of how they could improve their diet regime?
Yeah. One tip is dark leafy greens. They are the most nutrient-dense foods that we can consume. And I try to do it at least 3 times a day. So, I mentioned the oatmeal. You can do fruit smoothies, have salads, add greens to anything that you're cooking, whether it's a soup or a stew or a sauce. Dark green leafies also include the vegetables like broccoli and broccoli sprouts. Broccoli sprouts are the most nutrient-dense food that we can eat. So if you like sprouts, eat broccoli sprouts. And also focus on omega-3 rich foods. You know, OMS lets us know that it's important to have that good balance of omega-3s to omega-6 fats in our diet. And there are a lot of omega-3 rich foods like Brussels sprouts and walnuts and broccoli and kidney beans and wild rice and flax seeds and chia seeds and hemp hearts. You know, sprinkle some chia seeds in your smoothie or have some hemp hearts on your salads. They're really nutrition powerhouses.
And another thing, asking for a bit of advice. We have a tradition on the coffee break to ask if there's any advice from your experience that you could give with particularly people who are new to following OMS that would help them start their OMS journey.
Yeah, you know, I think one of the important things is to start where you are. You know, right where you are. Here I am. I'm going to make steps today to make changes to recommit to living well. You know, I think we're just into the new year now as we're recording this, and this is a great time to do some self-evaluation. You know, where are you on your 7 steps of the program, and where can you make tweaks to adjust maybe a little, add some more dark green leafies, get rid of the processed foods, you know, focus a bit more on maybe stress reduction, adding daily meditation or a walking meditation. You know, we talked about walking and how relaxing that can be and stress reducing that can be. And, you know, another thing is don't expect changes in 1 week. You know, this is going to take a long time. I think Dr. Jelinek said, you know, envision it as a large boat. You know, you can't turn it around on a dime. It's going to be slow to turn. And once it turns and gets through that turn, and it can take off in a new direction. So stick with the program, keep making changes, and look for support on the OMS website and also through circles.
I think that's the problem, isn't it? We've become accustomed as a society for instant things. So you have a headache, you take a tablet, the headache goes away. I mean, it's even to the point now, my kids hate it if there's something that comes out weekly on television, which is rarer and rarer, but there are still some things on Netflix and so on that are released weekly. And they can't believe that this was how we used to watch television. They're like, you waited a week between episodes.
Right.
Yeah, that's what happened because it was on schedule. And now everything's instant. And you try and so I think that's the problem with healthcare is that people just expect, I take a tablet or I have a treatment and then that's it. And it will instantly make a change. And when you say, well, this could be 6 months, at least, maybe even a couple of years for you to get better, then they start to lose faith and they think, oh, well, I tried it for 2 months. It didn't really do anything.
Right, exactly. And, you know, it does take time. I try to think of it as building muscles in the gym. You know, if I go to the gym once and lift weights, I don't have big muscles. But if I go consistently and work at it and try a little bit harder each time, the muscles will come, and it takes time.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much for that. And thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Living Well with MS Coffee Break. And I hope that you have a wonderful 2022.
Thank you. My pleasure. And I hope you have a great year as well.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of Living Well with MS Coffee Break. Please check out this episode's show notes at overcomingms.org/podcast. You'll find all sorts of useful links and bonus information there. Do you have questions about this episode? Or do you or someone you know want to be featured in a future Coffee Break episode? Then email us at podcast@overcomingms.org. We'd love to hear from you. You can also subscribe to the show on your favourite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. Living Well with MS Coffee Break is kindly supported by a grant from the Happy Charitable Trust. If you'd like to support the Overcoming MS charity and help keep our podcast advertising free, you can donate online at overcomingms.org/donate. To learn more about Overcoming MS and its array of free content and programs, including webinars, recipes, exercise guides, OMS circles, our global network of community support groups, and more, please visit our website at overcomingms.org. While you're there, don't forget to register for our monthly e-newsletter so you can stay informed about the podcast and other news and updates from Overcoming MS. Thanks again for tuning in, and see you next time.